Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for Centroid's External Threat Preparedness webinar. My name is Mary Burcham, and I am the Business Development Manager here at Centroid. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. We're recording this webinar, and it will be available on our website, centroid.com, next week. We also want to encourage questions throughout this presentation, so please use the chat feature and we'll address those questions at the end of the presentation. We've got a lot of great information to cover in a short amount of time, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you Harold Halpern. He is our sales director here at Centroid. Harold, I'll go ahead and turn the call over to you at this time.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate it. And thank everybody for taking some time out of their busy day. I know it's, it's tough these days. And hopefully this material is not only poignant, but very informative to you. Along with me, co-presenting will be Ken Compton. He's one of our senior principal architects. And Ken is really the architect of this presentation. Kind of funny. But suffice it to say, what we want to do is jump right into the material. What we're going to do is give you a couple of minutes on who Centroid is, what we do, and how we do it. That's our commercial payout, really paying the bills for us. And then we'll get right into the meat of why all of you joined, right? So let's get right into it. Again, I'm Harold Halpern, and you've got Ken Compton, one of the principal architects on here. So the next slide is really just a disclaimer saying it's for educational purposes only. And we'll get into really who we are and then right into the material, followed by a Q&A at the end. And again, as Mary said, if you've got questions along the way, please enter them in the chat box and we will get to them as they pop up. So let's get into it right now. Centroid is an Oracle Platinum partner, specifically a top 5 strategic partner, and we span the gamut from servers and storage up through the OS into the database layer, all the way out to the front end ERP and edge applications into the cloud. And we do everything from project-based solutions, customizations, upgrades, managed services, pre-cloud assessment, cloud migrations, cloud optimizations, and Oracle license and hardware resale. And that's really, our portfolio in a nutshell. So as you look deeper on the next slide, you'll see we've been around since 1997. We've got over 300 employees, well over 100 plus professional certifications that span not only Oracle, but AWS, GCP, Azure. We've got 12 industry specializations, and our customer base is growing by the day, but we're saying there's about 125. I think that number has grown since this slide was created. And there's a sample as we go on as to who the customers are. But as you look to the next slide, you'll see the product focus, as I said, is everything from EBS through OID, through the database, through security, through Spark, through Oracle Engineered Systems, and the like. You can read this or you can go to our website and you'll see further. And, again, the services run the gamut from gap analysis to hosting and migration services, optimization, and the like. So as you can see, the idea here is Centroid is a top to bottom or bottom to top approach, which is why we can help you with this topic in particular as it relates to not only your database and compute, but all the way out to the front end ERP. This is self-explanatory as to who we are and what we provide. And again, everything from workload fingerprinting, understanding what will drive your future state decisions, to blueprinting what candidate database applications and securities can be mapped and where they can go, laying out migration plans, both from on-prem to colo, on-prem to cloud, on-prem to alternate data center, providing lift and shift capabilities and global support. And as you'll see, I think on the next slide, we've got a map that kind of outlines our end-to-end coverage with offices throughout the U.S. in Dallas, Detroit, New York Metro, Minneapolis, Northern, Southern California, Hyderabad, India, and Dublin, Ireland. So we've got a true follow the sun coverage model that allows us to help you through your business end to end every day of the week, every hour of the day, every minute of every hour. And that, I believe, is the end of our commercial introduction. And I'll turn over the meat of why you guys came here. This is our clients, but I'll turn you over to Ken. And Ken, why don't you kind of take over here and kind of let people into the meat of the presentation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ken Compton. I'm a principal architect at Centroid. And today we're going to be going over pandemic threats. Basically, everybody right now, probably on this webinar, is currently on lockdown. We're all familiar with this over the last couple months. And it has posed a different type of disaster for IT. And we've had a lot of customers that have been struggling to some extent with the lockdown and all their users being remote. So that's where we're going to go today with this presentation. So basically, most customers are familiar with your natural disasters, your normal DR scenarios, which is you fail over to a DR center, you run there for a period of time and fail back. Usually with a natural disaster, it's one local, it's one region, it's one spot. It's not the whole entire, it's not national, it's not international like a pandemic. Once you get into a pandemic, obviously it changes the whole landscape of things simply because it's global, it's worldwide. You can't simply fail over to a different data center in the state next to you or a couple miles down the road, as they're experiencing the same pandemic that you are. So basically, in your traditional DR scenario, most people that are currently set up with DR right now will have their primary site, and they'll fail over to a small DR site. Sometimes, like in this scenario here, we have some dev and QA running at a small DR site, just so it's not dummy equipment just sitting there spinning. But 99% of the time, it's still going to be a scaled down version of what is in production. And to support production at a long-term or full production basis usually can't happen without expanding it, which obviously can take time. It can be expensive. And if you're in a pandemic and you can't get the equipment and don't have the people to install it, you run into a whole different scenario, a whole different problem, which most people are not prepared for at this point.
And Ken, that's really a good point, right? A lot of folks are using colo facilities, which pose their own problem, especially if they're outside of what are normal driving distances. That's a key point, right? As you look at what traditional DR is and how it may or may not have been set up for the pandemic, right?
Yeah, definitely. And depending upon your DR strategy, we have customers that have, they DR over to Iron Mountain in Colorado. Well, getting tapes there and getting employees flown out there and everything else to bring up the DR right now is an issue. In a pandemic, obviously flying, traveling, period, has been an issue since this all started. And that just delays things and causes future problems and more problems. Just touch upon this a little bit. Another problem with pandemics are they kind of come and go. Just like right now, obviously it's at the top of everybody's mind because we're all in lockdown and this COVID has been a pretty major issue, obviously. But, I assume once everything kind of goes back to normal, a year or two down the road, everybody's going to kind of forget about it, and they're not going to be prepared for it next time it comes around. If you go back to, this is some stuff I pulled off of the CDC. Basically, this is from George W. Bush back in 2005, 2006. And they actually came up with a strategy in 2005 of what they wanted to do for pandemics. And they talked about the last three major pandemics from 1918, 1957, 1968. And then since then, obviously, we've had a couple more. With 2009, we had the H1N1, and now we have COVID currently running rampant. But then in 2006, they developed an implementation plan on what to do. And it actually talks about quote unquote snow day in the plan, which is what we are right now. It's lockdown. So a lot of people really were caught off guard by this lockdown, thinking it can never happen. It was documented by the president back in 2006 that this is what would happen in the event of a national pandemic like we're having now.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you brought up the three previous pandemics in the last century, right, which was just around the corner. It's probably indicative of what the future is probably going to look like, especially, we're 20 years into this century and we've already had two, and one of which has caused an actual snow day or, shelter at home type of scenario. So yeah, Ken, this is really, eye-opening that it's been around for 15 years and it's finally the first time it's been called into action. And, hopefully the folks on this phone and on the webcast didn't get caught in a situation that's precluding them from operating, efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, we'll always hope and pray for the best, but plan for the worst. I mean, hopefully we don't have another COVID anytime soon, but we may have something within the next 10 years. It might be 50 years, but it could be 10 times worse than COVID too. We just have to plan for it and be prepared for it. Pray it doesn't happen, but be ready for it if it does.
Sure.
So basically, in short, for a pandemic, failing over to a cloud like OCI gives you the ability to instantly fail over. You could expand, if you have a pilot light running right now, say you could have a small footprint, just like you do with your normal DR. So maybe you only have a very small percentage, 10% of what you have in production running in OCI or less. But at the time that you need it, you could expand it. You can make it bigger than what your production is. The resources are there. They're readily available. It's all high performance, and it's a really low cost comparatively to having a DR site that is a clone of your prod site sitting somewhere that you may not be able to access in a pandemic event. This just talks a little bit about all your Oracle applications, your Oracle stack, failing over to Oracle Cloud. Oracle Cloud, they offer bare metal compute. You can do virtualization, block storage. They offer database systems. You basically have a whole litany of things you can choose from. And again, like I said, you can start with something very small and expand and grow it as needed. So now this is basically talking about what happens from a protected site to a recovery site. This is you failing over to your cloud. You have your database and everything running on a OCI tier and in quote unquote pilot light, where it's a small database tier. It's not your huge full blown rack system that you have on prem. Basically, it's sitting there in recovery. It's waiting for you in OCI. So then when you do need it, you can fail over and expand it and run full production without a problem.
Ken, before you go, right,
Yep.
Can you just elaborate just a little bit on pilot light and the fact that you're reducing your ongoing cost because you need a fraction of the license, just a simple amount that, using the term pilot light, is enough to keep the oven warm. And when you finally need to turn it on, you actually just port over what you have in prod, correct?
Yeah. So for something specific like that, like Oracle database, you could be running DataGuard, Golden Gate, what have you. You could be, you have a hot standby or a cold standby in OCI, which is a very small footprint. waiting for an event to fail over to, or if you want to test it. And then if, in the event that you do need it in a situation like this, you can go full bore. You can blow it up into a full big rack system with as many CPUs and as much memory as you need.
So, the Sesame Street version would be you could have two OCPUs in Oracle in OCI sitting there as a pilot light with all the products that you have in production. And when you're ready to turn it on, you just light up the additional cores in OCI, and there you are, correct?
Correct. And then
Thank you.
Another issue we've had with several of our customers is they're set up for 30 or 40 or 50 remote users. That's what they're licensed for, and that's what they have the infrastructure to support, connectivity-wise, hardware-wise. Excuse me. So now that they have 4, 5, 6, 700 users, they're all working remote. They just can't handle the load. So they're having to try to expand their infrastructure from a connectivity standpoint, firewalls, hardware, their VPN concentrators. They're having a lot of issues with that, and obviously trying to get hardware right now with the supply chain and get people to install it and get things done when everybody's on lockdown and not traveling and not operating. It's an issue. Where on the OCI side, you have your direct connect, you have your VPNs, you have everything in place, and they can support whatever you need.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
So basically, this is just going to talk a little bit about OCI. Another issue a lot of people have is they're on a lot of old, outdated hardware. That's a big problem a lot of people have trying to update the hardware and life cycle it. When you're running OCI, you're on all the newest, latest stuff, latest CPUs. You have NVMe, you have solid state, you have SSD, whatever you need from an Oracle standpoint. All the latest and greatest hardware is available. You also have your network virtualization is off board, so your network is very secure and very flexible. And we're going to get into a little bit about the cross connects and availability, but this is your main OCI global availability, which shows all of the different sites across the world that actually currently have OCI in them. So no matter where you are globally, you can always have something local, quote unquote, to you. Each of the regions also have 3 availability domains for failover. And this goes to show your customer data center, your fast connect or VPN. You get a fast connect dedicated connection into there, and then your end customers access. Now, another big part, which is nice also, is the cross connect, the cloud cross connect. So basically, if you look here, there's multiple OCI sites that have a cross connect to Azure. So if you are running stuff out of Azure, you can have a direct connection into your infrastructure. So if you're running applications, SQL databases, anything on the Microsoft side in Azure, you have direct access essentially to all your Oracle infrastructure at the same time.
So essentially, if you're Azure for part of your operation, and most people are fully aware of Azure's large presence in the cloud space, there's virtually zero latency, right, with this sort of setup here?
Correct. Yep. Basically, basically you're not going to have any kind of issues performance-wise accessing between your Microsoft apps and your Oracle apps on the different platforms.
Thanks, Ken.
So this is just a little overview of the public cloud storage. So basically you have reliable, secure storage. It can be encrypted. Oracle can't access your storage. Very low TCO, and you can do just storage if you need to in OCI if you don't have compute needs or what have you.
And Ken, this kind of leads into the overarching theme too about how ZFS plays a big role, right? How ZFS is the backbone in Oracle Cloud and can be the same exact units that you're using on-prem or in your data centers, right?
Yeah, Yep, we'll actually get into that a little bit. Oracle
Sorry.
uses.
Sorry if I stole your thunder.
No, you're good. We actually, that gets into the ZFS side, which is what we're going to cover next, Oracle ZFS appliance. The Oracle ZFS appliance is the backbone of the OCI cloud. It's a very powerful storage system. I'm not sure how many they have at this point. I know back a few years ago, I think they had over 600 at one point. It's probably grown by leaps and bounds since then. But getting into this ZFS array, like the new ZS7-2, it's really an end-to-end solution. It can serve up data via any protocol you can think of pretty much for the most part. A lot of times people they buy arrays that'll serve up SMB. They'll buy arrays just for block storage. They'll buy arrays like NAS attached storage for NFS. The ZFS is a one-stop shop. It has everything. You can do iSCSI, you can do SMB, you can do NFS, HTTP, FTP, SFTP. You can serve it up however you want it. And then as far as connectivity, you have your InfiniBand, you have fiber channel, you have all your different Ethernet speeds. You also get a big part of it, especially for speed, is the compression. On a general, depending upon what you're doing with it, obviously it's different for each scenario. But I know like on a VMware workload in general, you're going to have a 3 to 4x compression ratio. And the compression actually improves performance versus hurts performance just because of the way the ZFS array is built. With your basic LZ4 compression, usually your performance is actually faster with it than without it, just because you're writing a third or a quarter of the data to actual disks. So you can actually get a performance bump by enabling compression. A lot of people used to always be afraid of turning on compression because they thought they were going to take a performance hit. In this case, actually, sometimes you'll actually gain performance. It also offers snapshots, clones, replication to different data centers. We can also replicate out, obviously, to the DR data center or replicate the data out to OCI or a cloud service. As far as management, REST API, they have the standard browser CLI. The analytics are basically dtrace analytics. That's coming from like a Solaris operating system. If everybody's familiar with dtrace, you can get very granular. If you have a database that has an issue, you can drill down to each database file and see how it's performing, what the latency is, and see all the stats on a per file level basis. So the analytics are priceless. I mean, that alone in itself is a huge part of what a benefit of the array itself. If you're having any kind of performance degradation or you're trying to figure things out, you can drill down each interface, you can drill down each file, each volume, each disk, and find out exactly what's going on. This basically talks about it being a one-stop shop. That's another big part too about the ZFS. Not only talking about all the different things it can do, is it can do all of them in one array. So it's very common to have a ZFS array that has either flash or high performance disks, and also a pool of backup disks, capacity slow disks. So it can be your backup array and your high performance array, both in one. People run their VMware OVM, you run your VDI, Citrix, whatever you want out of it. A lot of KVM, any kind of hypervisor you want. You can run all your performance stuff off of it, and you can also have it as a target for backups for all your Oracle databases, your ODAs, Exadatas, what have you. And that is a big.
Ken, this marries nicely if you're running Oracle engineered systems or if you're running any other piece of hardware, right? It's not only an Oracle backup storage appliance. It can be used with non-Oracle products, correct?
Yep, we have a lot of customers that use it for backup of SQL databases or stuff over on Microsoft side. Any kind of hardware. It could be, you have a whole Dell platform. We have actually one customer for it runs all Dell. They're a big Microsoft shop, and they use ZFS solely for all their backups and performance storage, and they replicate it to a DR site with another ZFS on the other side. So they have all the replication snapshots set up which means if you have an immediate recovery need or something happens locally, you can restore it instantly. Or if there's an outage or a problem, you fail over to the DR site and you bring up everything on the other side. And again, that's a whole entire Dell solution, but using ZFS as the heart of it for storage. So, and this talks a little bit about how the mix trays, you can mix flash disk, performance disk, capacity disk all in one array. There's no issues with that whatsoever. And I've personally designed and ran and managed various ZFS arrays that are 4 petabyte, 6 petabyte. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the next slide here. Okay. So a big benefit of the ZFS array is the ZFS file system, obviously, which a big part of that is the DRAM cache. So all your asynchronous writes are going to go to a DRAM cache. DRAM is obviously way faster than any flash disk or spinning disk out there. So that is one thing that gives you a really big performance bump. It'll also be your cache for reads too, for your most recently used data. So instead of going to a flash disk or a spinning disk, you actually pull it right from DRAM. So there's nothing faster. And usually on most of our arrays, we'll get a 80 to 90% cache hit ratio. So we're pulling a lot of your most recently used data right from cache. I've personally I've done a lot of performance testing with the ZFS arrays over the years, starting with the ZS3s all the way up. And we've done a lot of performance testing against just complete solid all flash arrays versus spinning disk arrays on the ZFS. And 9 out of 10 times for a lot of your writes especially are going to be faster on the ZFS array than they will be on all flash array. Your reads vary, obviously, if they're sequential or random. But if you're going out to spinning disk, obviously you take a hit if you're actually going out to spinning disk. But you also have the option of having all flash on the ZFS side too. So you really can get the best of both the worlds with huge performance increases with reads and writes overall with the architecture of the ZFS file system and appliance. So this talks a little bit about using the ZFS as a backup appliance. Some people use it as performance appliance. Some people use it as a backup appliance. Some people use it as both. Commonly, it's used as both, especially once people get it in the door. But this is just showing that you can back up any, Commvault, Veritas, EMC. You can back up everything to it. You have a lot of accelerators in there. You also have all your compression. You have dedupe. You have a lot of things available to you, which are actually, I should have talked about that. That's in the ZFS replication. The ZFS replication, that's another big bonus too, is with the replication and dedupe on replication. Especially if you have a slower WAN link or a pricey WAN link, you're only replicating a third or a quarter or maybe a tenth of your data actually over the wire with the compression and dedupe. So if you have 10 terabytes, you're actually replicating 2 terabytes or 4 terabytes or less based on the compression and deduplication that you can get with the replication.
Ken, that's an interesting point. Haven't you worked with a few customers that was a key reason why they deployed ZFS for that particular point?
Yeah, we've had a couple customers that were trying to replicate from different states. They had MPLS circuits that were smaller circuits and they're higher price circuits, and they're trying to replicate a ton of data, and they weren't having any success with it. By putting in the ZFS array, they're replicating about a sixth of the data that they were, but they're still getting everything that they need. Everything's going across. It's just all compressed and deduped down. So they're getting about instead of moving 6 terabytes, they're moving 1 terabyte. And they have a very, very high change rate. So that is where, before it was taking them days to get the data replicated over. Now they can replicate it every single night.
This is really poignant, and I hate to point back to the original topic, but due to the fact of the state of the country and the state of the world right now and the demands that are being placed on telco and the internet in general. This is so poignant right now that it's unbelievable, because everybody to some extent is experiencing some sort of kind of issue with communications, be it the MPLS, be it general internet connections, be it the fact that people are working remotely and trying to use the public internet. So that in itself, in a pandemic, is a paramount point, unless I'm missing something, right?
No, it's pretty big. I mean, we do have a couple customers right now that are struggling, trying to get their circuits turned up, their MPLS circuits turned up. And they're also trying to process stuff off hours because everybody's VPN in, everybody's working remotely. So their stuff that goes on during the day, normal replication traffic is actually killing their VPN users. So they're having to, schedule stuff to get copied off overnight, which obviously reduces the time that they have to copy. So if you have something like this where it's all compressed and or dedupe, you're transferring way less data way quicker and using a lot less of that circuit.
And then as far as setting this up, setup configuration, this is not something that takes months and months to set up, configure, test, and the like, right? This is a relatively rapid implementation, correct?
Yes, 100%. 98.5% of the time, we're waiting on lines to get turned up. The ZFS installs on both sides is a very, very quick and painless process. Especially in the ZS7 racked unit. It's a full rack unit. It drops right in. You plug in the power and you configure it. At that point, you're just waiting for the telco to turn up the MPLS or the IPsec tunnel, whatever you're trying to communicate across. Once you have connectivity, it's just clicks to actually get something replicate from one ZFS to the other.
Well, Ken, the folks on the line don't realize that you've done literally thousands of these things in your career. So what may be, child's play for you is still not very difficult for other folks, right?
No, it's actually a very, very simple interface to use. It's very intuitive. If you've never used one before in your life, if you just sat down at it, you can kind of figure it out. Really simple. If you have any experience with any other NAS devices, if you've ever used a NAS device, if you sit down to ZFS, you can figure it out really quickly and easily.
Excellent. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So another thing we're going to talk about was the ODA. just briefly. The ODA itself, if people are familiar with it, it's the Oracle Database Appliance. It's a great, especially for smaller companies or even bigger companies, depending on their workload and what they're trying to do with databases. But the Oracle Database Appliance actually will back up directly to the Oracle Cloud. They actually have a plugin right in the interface. Right here, where basically you just put in your OCI credentials and you can back up your ODA directly to the cloud.
So Ken, before you dive into this, could you just give a brief overview of the ODA itself? What comprises the ODA for folks that don't know what it is?
Yep, your Oracle Database Appliance is just an engineered system for Oracle databases. They can be virtualized or non-virtualized, and they can also run HA that have basically a tray of disks shared between them, so you can fail over between the two different heads. But it's a full drop-in solution for Oracle databases. You literally plug it in, it comes up. It's kind of the same thing. It's a real simple step-by-step setup process. Ask you a few questions, and you have an Oracle database online literally within minutes, almost of plugging it in. It's a really quick, solid Oracle database implementation.
And it's a capacity on demand unit, correct? So by that, I mean, as you require more capacity, you can turn on cores. You don't need to buy licenses for the full unit. You can only buy licenses for the cores you need when you need it and add as capacity is required, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it depends on what you're using. Starting out, you don't have to license everything. Obviously, licensing as you use whatever you require.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, everybody understood what it was and that we didn't just take for granted that everyone was familiar with the device.
Nope, and that's actually I don't tail spin off too far, but even with your private cloud appliance, which is another Oracle engineered system that we do sell a lot of, install, and manage a lot of, it's all trusted partitioning. So if the server has 44 cores in it, you license and you have a VM on it with 2 cores, you pay for 2 cores. With the trusted partitioning on the PCA, you basically, whatever your VM is what you have to pay for, not what the whole system is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. That actually wraps up and gets us down into the Q&A section.
Well,
I just emailed you a couple of questions that we received while you were talking. So you should check your email and you should have those.
Okay. So how can I test out the functionality or user experience of a ZFS array? We can give you the link, but actually the ZFS array does have a virtual download available for VMware or VirtualBox. It's a virtual simulator, which is actually, it's really nice. It's 100% full working. You can set up disks, you can set up pools, you can actually serve data from it. I use it a lot myself to even test upgrades. You can run through a full upgrade of the system with the virtual simulator. It has basically all the full functionality of a real ZFS array, and it's a VM. It's a VirtualBox download or a VMware download. We can get the link published out directly to it, but that'll give you a full experience of what the ZFS array, look and feel is, and what the user interface is like.
and Ken, if somebody would like to get a walkthrough with how to do that, they could just email you, right? And you'll set up a WebEx or a team session and walk them through, in 30, 45 minutes on the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's not a problem at all.
Right.
It's actually a really slick product. It's nice to be able to actually use it as your kind of proof of concept or even testing. Like I said, when a new release comes out, the 8820 release of the ZFSA just came out not too long ago. Before I actually use it, even on my QA or even on my test systems, I go through and do it in the simulator just to test the upgrade functionality, make sure there's no issues or make sure there's no hitches before I actually try it on a real system.
Excellent. Very valuable information. Thanks, Ken.
Another question about OCI. Does OCI offer a free trial period to get started? We can put a link up for that also, but OCI does have a free 30-day trial period. So you can get into OCI, spin up some VMs, you can test out some storage, and you can do some performance testing, whatever you want to do. But it's a 30-day free trial. We can post a link for that. But it's the same thing. It's real simple. You get out there, sign up, and it gets you right into the OCI interface.
And just as a sidebar on that, I know we touched on it earlier during the first couple of slides. If anyone is a Oracle EBS customer and you're thinking about moving your EBS to the cloud without going to a SaaS model, but want to keep the customizations you have, but you may need an upgrade, just so everybody knows, we do have a proprietary tool called Athena, which maps out the chemleys or the customizations that are done to EBS to show the complexity of an upgrade so that we can then map out how difficult and what the actual sweat effort will be to do the upgrade of that EBS, both on the core database side and on the application side itself. So you get a true timeline that shows what goes into it. So, as you're looking at OCI, not only for a backup solution, but if you're looking for it to be a solution to kind of lift and modernize your EBS without going to a SaaS model, it is available, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about that offline. Too complex to do in the next couple of minutes. So sorry to interrupt, Ken.
Oh, it's all good. The last question I have is, how secure is the Oracle ZFS appliance? So it's actually really highly secure. It does offer a 2-tier advanced encryption. It's all AES. It's 128, 192, or 256-bit encryption. The data is stored inline. It's not stored at rest. I know you have a lot of your arrays nowadays store at rest, which is okay, but it's you still have a period there where it's not actually encrypted. All your ZFS encryption is done inline, and thanks to the overabundant amount of CPUs in there, you really don't take a performance hit at all with the encryption. It's pretty much all native. If you turn it on and off and try to do performance tests, there's very little difference you usually see with the encryption, even with 256-bit encryption turned on. And you can encrypt your whole entire pool, or you can encrypt a file system. It's up to you. It depends how secure you want to be. Nowadays, most people just encrypt the whole entire storage pool. That's what I've been seeing a lot of, especially with a lot of the newer mandates. But at that point, it's all key encryption and 256-bit. So you're secure as you can get at that point.
Excellent. Excellent. Are there any other questions that have come in, Mary or Ken? Did you guys get anything directly to you?
Nope, that's all I had.
Okay. Well, for anybody else who either had a question, or if you think of a question, post this webinar. We're going to have some information for you as we close up here. You can email it directly either to Mary, Ken, or myself, right? And I think I'll turn it back to you, Mary, to kind of close everything up. And again, we'd like to thank you for giving us, 45 minutes of your day. We know that, time is precious for you, and the demands of working remotely are probably draining every spare second you have. So again, thank you for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Ken. As you can see right now, there's a link that just popped up. If you are interested in scheduling a complimentary disaster recovery health check, we'll be happy to get that set up for you. And just on behalf of everyone here at Centroid, we want to thank you all for your time today, and stay safe. Thank you.